Untie me, I'll do anything, she pleaded but the rancher to the Apache woman. The morning sun rose slowly over the wide open plains, painting the sky with soft shades of orange and gold. The air was crisp, carrying the smell of dry grass and the faint scent of earth that had soaked in the night's dew. John, a lone rancher, guided his horse along the narrow path that cut through the rolling hills. Brr. He had been riding for hours, checking fences and looking after his cattle, and the early calm was something he treasured. Life on the ranch was quiet, sometimes too quiet, but it gave him a sense of freedom he could not find anywhere else. Bray. He liked the way the wind pushed against his face, and how the sound of hooves on dry ground echoed in the empty plains. As he moved deeper into the territory near the edge of Apache lands, John felt a subtle change in the atmosphere. The birds that usually sang loudly in the morning had fallen silent, and the rustling of small animals in the grass seemed sharper than usual. His instincts told him to be careful. Parades. He had heard stories of travelers being caught off guard, and though he respected the Apache people, he knew that misunderstandings could quickly turn dangerous. John's life had taught him patience, but it had also taught him vigilance. Narration. Suddenly, something caught his eye, a movement in the tall grass, almost hidden but impossible to ignore. Narration. He pulled his horse to a slow stop, squinting to see better. There, tangled in a small thicket, was a young woman struggling against some unseen force. Her dark hair was loose, and her hands moved frantically, trying to fend off a pair of wild animals that had drawn too close. She looked small and vulnerable, yet there was a fierce determination in her movements, a fire that refused to give up. John's heart raced, but he knew he had to act carefully. He didn't want to startle her or provoke the animals further. Speaking softly, he tried to make his presence known without startling her. Hey there. I'm not here to hurt you, he called, his voice steady but gentle. The woman froze, her wide eyes reflecting a mix of fear and caution. She didn't move, as if deciding whether to run, fight, or trust this stranger who had appeared from nowhere. Every muscle in her body seemed tense, ready to react to the slightest threat. John noticed her clothing, simple but strong, showing signs of someone used to living with the land, someone capable of surviving in the wilderness. Carefully, he reached for a long stick lying nearby and used it to scare the wild animals away. They hesitated, unsure of his intentions, and finally retreated into the thicker grass. Only then did he step closer to the woman, lowering his voice even more. It's okay. They're gone. You're safe now! Her eyes never left his face, searching for any sign of deceit. Then, finally, she spoke, her voice low and cautious. Who are you? John, he said simply. I live nearby, on a ranch. He didn't mention much else, knowing that too many words might scare her further.
Are you hurt? She shook her head, though he noticed the faint cuts on her arms and the dirt smudged across her skin. Her hands trembled slightly, and he could see the tension in her shoulders.
It was clear she had been struggling for hours. I can manage, she said, though her voice carried the weight of exhaustion. John studied her for a moment. He knew she was capable, strong even, but the wild animals had been a real threat. He made a decision. Come on, you need rest. I have water and some food. You can sit by the fire while you regain your strength. The woman hesitated. There was a flicker of fear in her eyes, a memory of past encounters, perhaps, or a deep mistrust of strangers. But hunger and fatigue were stronger. Slowly, She nodded, allowing John to lead her to a safe spot near the edge of his property where he had built a small shelter and fire pit. As they walked, John couldn't help but notice her cautious glances. She was alert, every sense tuned to the environment, as if she were listening for danger that wasn't there yet. He respected that. It reminded him of the stories his father had told him about the Apache people. Resilient, clever, and fiercely independent. He wondered what had brought her here alone, in this dangerous territory, at this hour. Once they reached the shelter, John guided her to a spot near the fire. He offered her some water and a small piece of dried meat. She accepted it reluctantly, eating slowly, her eyes never leaving him. "You don't have to trust me yet," he said, keeping his tone calm. Purring.
"But I can't let you stay out there alone like that. It's dangerous."
Her gaze softened just slightly as she nodded. "I was hunting. Something went wrong." Her voice was quiet, but there was strength in it, a story behind it that she didn't feel ready to share. John didn't press. He knew that trust couldn't be forced. It had to grow, slowly, like the way grass grew across the plains after a long winter. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher in the sky, and the warmth of the fire mixed with the heat of the afternoon. John worked quietly, tending to his chores while keeping an eye on her. He noticed how carefully she observed everything, the way he stacked wood, the way he handled the tools, the way he spoke. It was clear she was learning, analyzing, and understanding without asking questions. There was a quiet intelligence in her, a sharpness that matched her courage. At one point, she finally spoke again, her voice softer this time. "Why are you helping me?" It was simple, yet complicated. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said finally. "No one should face danger alone if you can help them." She studied him, as if weighing the truth of his words. Then, without another word, she leaned back, finally allowing herself a small moment of rest. John could see the exhaustion in her posture, the tension in her muscles slowly giving way to the relief of safety. Evening came and the sky turned shades of pink and purple. The plains were quiet, except for the occasional call of a distant coyote. John built a larger fire and they both sat nearby, the silence between them no longer uncomfortable but shared. There was an unspoken understanding forming, a bridge between two worlds that had rarely met. That night, John watched the stars rise, feeling the weight of responsibility and the strange connection forming with the young woman. He didn't know her story yet, and she didn't know his. But both of them sensed that something important was beginning. A meeting of courage and caution, strength and trust. Neither could predict what would come next, but for now, they were together, safe from the dangers that roamed the plains. And as the wind whispered through the tall grass, and the fire flickered softly, John thought about the strange turn of fate that had brought them together. In that moment, the world felt both vast and intimate, a place where survival, courage, and humanity intersected in the most unexpected ways. The next morning, the first light of dawn filtered through the thin clouds and painted the plains in soft gold. John woke early, as he always did, checking the perimeter of his ranch before the day's heat became too strong. The air was fresh, carrying the scent of wildflowers and earth. The young Apache woman, Ayana, was still asleep near the fire, her dark hair spread loosely across the ground. For a moment, John simply watched her, noticing how peaceful she looked despite the tension and fear he knew had brought her here. Her chest rose and fell steadily, a quiet rhythm that contrasted sharply with the chaos of the previous day. As he prepared a small breakfast of bread and dried meat, John thought about what had happened. He had never intended to tie her up, yet the moment had felt necessary at the time. It had been a precaution, a way to prevent her from running into danger before she was ready. Brr. He hoped she understood that it had not been done out of cruelty. The thought of the plea she had whispered still echoed in his mind. Untie me. I'll do anything. He remembered the fear in her voice and the strength behind her words. Desperation. She had been desperate, yet brave enough to speak, and that courage had impressed him more than he expected. Ayanna stirred as the smell of food reached her. Brr. Her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the morning light. She saw John moving quietly, tending to the fire and arranging their meager breakfast. Bright. For a brief moment, she felt a strange mixture of gratitude and unease. She knew she had no reason to fully trust him yet, but his calm and careful demeanor made the fear in her chest slightly lighter. Desperation. I can manage myself now, she said cautiously, her voice still low but firmer than the day before. Desperation. I don't need to be tied up anymore. John nodded, understanding her need for independence. I know, he said gently. I didn't mean to make you feel trapped. It was only for your safety. But you have to understand, out here, danger is everywhere.
You can't always fight it alone. Ayanna looked down at her hands, remembering the wild animals and the fear that had gripped her the day before.
Brash. I know, she admitted softly. I didn't want to be helpless. John handed her a piece of bread, and she took it without another word. They ate in silence for a few minutes, the warmth of the fire and the quiet of the plains surrounding them. It was a moment of calm, yet beneath it, a tension lingered, the kind that comes from two strangers learning to navigate trust and fear in the same space. After breakfast, John decided it was time to begin repairing a section of the fence that had been damaged by the previous night's windstorm. He picked up his tools, glancing at Ayanna. If you want, you can help, he said, trying to sound casual. It's safer here if we work together. Ayanna hesitated. She had never done this kind of work before, yet she could see the logic. The fence was important, not just for John's ranch, but for the safety of the animals that grazed freely across the land. Slowly, she nodded and followed him to the broken section. As they worked, John noticed how carefully she observed his movements. She didn't rush, but she tried to mimic his actions, learning quickly how to handle the tools. He explained each step patiently, showing her how to secure the posts and fasten the wire. Her hands were steady, and she seemed to have a natural skill for understanding patterns and strength. John found himself impressed. She wasn't just brave. She was intelligent and quick to adapt. Not bad, he said finally, stepping back to look at the repaired fence. Breath.
Ayanna's lips curved into a small, cautious smile. I have to learn quickly, she said.
The world doesn't wait for anyone. The day passed slowly, marked by the steady rhythm of work and small, careful conversation. John asked her questions about herself, and she answered in short, careful sentences. Breath. She spoke of her family and her tribe, but only in general terms. It was clear she had learned to protect certain truths, to keep parts of her life hidden from strangers.
John respected that. He realized that trust was something that had to be earned, not demanded.
As the sun climbed higher, the heat began to press down on them. Sweat ran down their faces, but neither complained. There was a sense of purpose in the work, a shared understanding that action was safer than idle words. Occasionally, Ayanna would glance at John, noticing small habits and patterns. She saw how he moved with confidence, how he treated the land as both a responsibility and a companion. But she realized that beneath his quiet exterior was a man who knew the importance of care and attention. By late afternoon, the fence was sturdy, and John allowed himself a brief moment to rest. They sat together on a small rise, overlooking the plains. The sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the land. Ayana watched the light change, feeling a strange calm settle in her chest. For the first time in days, she felt a flicker of safety, even amidst uncertainty. Thank you, she said quietly, surprising John. For what? He asked, curious.
For not treating me like I was less than human, she replied, her voice soft but filled with sincerity. Many people would have assumed I was weak.
But you let me be myself. John looked at her, touched by her words. He hadn't expected gratitude, but it mattered. We all deserve respect, he said simply, no matter where we come from. The wind picked up slightly, rustling the grass and carrying the scent of distant rain. They both fell silent, listening to the sound. There was a connection forming between them, fragile but real. It wasn't friendship yet, nor was it trust fully earned, but it was something, an acknowledgement of each other's strength, courage, and humanity. Suddenly, a noise in the distance caught their attention. A branch snapping, too deliberate to be random. John's hand instinctively went to the knife at his belt, his body tense. Ayana's eyes narrowed, scanning the horizon. Stay calm, John whispered. It might be an animal. Or someone passing through.
They waited, motionless, until a small figure emerged from the brush. It was a traveler, carrying a bundle of supplies.
The figure waved, smiling politely. John relaxed slightly, signaling Ayana to do the same. It was a reminder that danger wasn't always immediate, but awareness was essential. As evening fell, John prepared a small fire for the night. Ayana sat nearby, carefully observing the flames. The sky turned deep blue, scattered with stars that shone like tiny lanterns across the plains. They shared a quiet meal, speaking in low tones about simple things: food, animals, and the rhythm of life on the ranch. It was ordinary, yet extraordinary in its own way. They were strangers learning to navigate an unfamiliar world together, learning to understand each other without words, fully explaining their histories. Before sleep, John untied the remaining restraints he had used the day before. He did it carefully, not wanting to rush the moment. You're free, he said softly.
I trust you won't run into danger unnecessarily. Ayana touched the ropes as they fell away, feeling the weight lift from her wrists and shoulders.
She looked at him, eyes reflecting a mixture of relief, gratitude, and something more subtle, an acknowledgement of the complex bond forming between them. Thank you, she whispered.
John nodded, unsure how to respond beyond the simple truth. You're welcome.
That night, as they slept under the stars near the fire, a quiet understanding had taken root. The previous day's fear and desperation had given way to cautious trust.
Both knew the world outside the ranch was unpredictable. But for this brief time they had found safety and a fragile connection. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and both would need courage, wisdom, and patience to navigate what was to come. But in that moment, the plains were peaceful, and for the first time since their encounter they could rest, knowing that survival was no longer a solitary struggle. The next morning the air was crisp and carried a faint scent of dew from the plains. The sun rose slowly over the horizon, casting long golden shadows that stretched across John's ranch. He was already up, checking the horses and cattle, his movements quiet but deliberate. Ayana had awakened as well, sitting by the fire, her eyes scanning the land. There was a new confidence in her posture, a sense of readiness that John noticed immediately. She had spent the past day learning, observing, and understanding the rhythm of life on the ranch, and now it seemed she wanted to do more than just survive. She wanted to contribute. John approached her, holding a small basket of food for breakfast. "Morning," he said quietly, trying to sound casual. "I've brought some bread and dried fruit."
Eat while it's still warm.
Ayana accepted the basket without a word, her hands steady. She ate slowly, her eyes occasionally flicking up to him as if she wanted to say something but wasn't sure how.
Finally, she spoke. "I want to help today."
Parade. "I don't want to just watch." John studied her carefully. There was determination in her voice, a strength he respected. "All right," he said. "I need to check the east fence." "A section has come loose, and the cattle could wander off if it isn't fixed. If you want, you can come with me." She nodded eagerly, and together they mounted their horses, riding toward the damaged section. The path was rough, winding through tall grass and rocky terrain. John could tell that Ayana was paying close attention to everything, the way he guided the horse, the subtle shifts in the ground, the direction of the wind. It was clear she was learning quickly, absorbing every detail. When they reached the fence, John dismounted and began examining the posts. Brr! Several had loosened and the wire sagged dangerously. "We need to fix this before the sun gets too high," he said.
"It won't take long if we work together." Ayana stepped forward, studying the fence and the materials. "Show me what to do," she said simply.
John nodded and demonstrated how to tighten the posts and secure the wire. She followed his instructions carefully, her hands strong and precise. John was impressed by her focus and natural skill. It wasn't just physical strength, it was intelligence and attention to detail that made her effective. As they worked, he spoke quietly, explaining why each step mattered and how the fence protected not only the livestock but the entire ranch. Hours passed in the sun. They worked side by side, neither complaining despite the heat and the heavy labor. Occasionally, John glanced at Ayana, noticing the subtle ways she had begun to move confidently, almost instinctively, around the land. He realized she was adapting not just to the physical work, but to the rhythm of life in a place where every action mattered. Finally, the fence was secure. John stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow, and smiled. "You did well," he said. I didn't think anyone could learn this quickly." Ayana looked at him, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I have to learn quickly." "The world doesn't wait for anyone," she replied. There was no pride in her voice, only a quiet acknowledgement of reality. Fiery. John could see that her life had demanded resilience and intelligence, and he respected her even more for it. As they prepared to return to the ranch, a distant noise caught their attention, the soft murmur of voices and the sound of hooves on dry ground. John stiffened, hand moving instinctively toward the knife at his belt. Ayana's eyes narrowed as she scanned the horizon. "We're not alone," she whispered. John nodded. "Stay calm," he said.
"It could be travelers, or it could be danger."
"Either way, we need to be ready." The figures became clearer as they approached. It was a small group of men passing by on horseback, carrying supplies. Relief washed over John, but he remained alert, never lowering his guard entirely. Ayana studied the group as well, her instincts sharp and observant. She had survived by reading people in situations carefully, and those instincts were invaluable now. Once the men passed, John let out a slow breath. "You handled that well," he said.
Most people would have panicked.
Ayana shrugged lightly, though he could see the pride in her eyes. "I've had to learn not to panic," she said simply.
Prepared. The rest of the day passed with a mix of work and quiet observation. John taught Ayana how to feed the livestock, repair tools, and even track small signs of wildlife that could indicate danger or opportunity. Narration. She absorbed it all quickly, asking questions when needed but mostly watching and learning. Their relationship had shifted subtly. The initial tension and fear had softened into something like cautious trust. Both understood that survival and safety were easier when they worked together. By late afternoon, a storm began to form in the distance. Dark clouds rolled across the plains, and a sharp wind carried the smell of rain. John and Ayana secured the animals and the tools, working in tandem with practiced efficiency. The approaching storm was dangerous, but they were ready. Their cooperation and growing understanding of each other had prepared them for this moment. As the first drops of rain fell, they took shelter under a small overhang near the ranch house. The storm unleashed itself fully, wind whipping and rain pounding the earth. They sat close together, listening to the sounds of the storm, sharing warmth and quiet conversation. "You've learned a lot in just 2 days," John said, his voice steady despite the weather. Ayana looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of pride and humility. "I've had to survive before," she said. This is different, but I can learn quickly when I need to." John nodded, impressed not only by her skill but by her perspective. He had met many people in his life, but few had the combination of intelligence, courage, and adaptability that she displayed. First, he realized that trust was no longer just a matter of words. It was evident in their actions, their ability to work together in tense and uncertain situations. When the storm passed, they emerged to inspect the ranch. The animals were safe, the fences held, and the land had survived the rain without major damage. It was a small victory, but a meaningful one. They had faced a challenge together, relying on each other's strengths. As the sun set, painting the plains with shades of orange and red, John and Ayana sat near the fire once again. They shared a simple meal, the warmth of the flames and the quiet of the evening making the world feel safe and contained, even though danger still existed beyond the ranch boundaries. They spoke in low tones about life, survival, and the unpredictability of the plains. Each word, each shared story built a bridge between them, strengthening the fragile trust that had begun to form. Ayana spoke carefully about her past, revealing bits of her life and the lessons she had learned without giving away everything. John listened, offering small insights from his own experiences, careful to maintain honesty and respect. They didn't need to fully understand each other yet. Their connection was built on shared experiences and mutual respect, and that was enough for now. As night fell, the stars emerged in the clear sky, each one sparkling like a reminder of the vast world around them. John looked at Ayana, thinking about how far she had come in just a short time, not just in learning the ranch work but improving her bravery, intelligence, and reliability. She had earned his respect fully, and he knew that if challenges came, they could face them together. Before settling down to sleep, John prepared their fire for the night, ensuring it was safe and would continue to provide warmth. Ayana watched him, noting the care he took in every action. Because death prevail. John chuckled softly. Careful keeps us alive, he replied, and it's important to protect those who depend on us, even if it's just each other for now. Ayana nodded, understanding the deeper meaning in his words. She had survived alone before, but this experience had shown her a different side of the world, a side where cooperation, trust, and shared effort could make a real difference. The night was quiet, the plains peaceful under the starry sky, yet both knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges and tests of trust. But for now, they rested, strengthened not only by food and shelter, but by the growing bond that had begun to form. Bird. Each had learned something important. That courage and skill were vital, but so was trust, patience, and understanding. Inspiration. The story of survival was no longer just individual. It had become a story of two people learning to rely on each other, preparing for the uncertainties that lay ahead. The morning broke with a low gray sky, hinting that the calm they had known was about to be disrupted. John awoke early as always, moving quietly around his ranch to check on the animals and the land. Ayana had also risen, alert and observant as she always was. Inspiration. Her movements were careful but confident, showing the progress she had made since their first tense encounter. She was no longer just a stranger to the land. She had begun to understand it, to move within it, as though she belonged, even if she knew she didn't fully. As John worked, he noticed the distant dust rising on the horizon. At first, he thought it was the usual travelers passing through. But something about the movement seemed different, urgent, purposeful, and more numerous than he had expected. He squinted, trying to make out details, and realized with growing concern that a group of people was approaching on horseback, riding fast across the plains.
Ayana, watching alongside him, stiffened at the sight.
"They're coming this way," she said quietly, her voice edged with concern. Her instincts were sharp, honed by years of survival, and John could tell she understood the seriousness of the situation.
We need to be careful, she added. John nodded.
Inspiration. "We'll stay calm," he said. "If they're looking for trouble, we won't give it." "If they're not, we still need to be ready." Inspiration. He moved quickly to secure the animals, checking gates and making sure the fences were properly closed.
Ayana helped without hesitation, her hands sure and fast.
The coordination between them felt natural now, built from the trust and shared experience of the previous days. The group of riders drew closer, and John could see now that they were indeed Apache warriors, strong and skilled, moving with precision and purpose. His heart sank a little. He respected the tribe and had no wish for conflict, but he knew misunderstandings could escalate quickly. Best. Ayana stood beside him, her dark eyes reflecting both worry and determination. "They're looking for me," she whispered. There was no fear in her voice, only the acknowledgement of a reality she had known might come. "I must face them carefully, or there will be trouble." He could try to hide her or send her away, but both options carried risks. The warriors were too skilled to be fooled easily, and any attempt to deceive them might provoke anger. He realized that the best course was to rely on honesty and caution, to show respect while keeping the situation under control. As the warriors reached the edge of the ranch, Ayana stepped forward slightly. John could see the tension in her posture, yet there was a calm authority in her stance. Inspiration. She spoke to them in their language, her words firm but respectful. The warriors listened, their expressions serious, then nodded. Inspiration. Ayana turned to John, translating in simple words.
They want to ensure I am safe, she said.
Inspiration.
And that no harm has come to anyone here. Relief washed over John, but he didn't relax entirely. The situation was still tense, and he knew any sudden movement could cause misunderstanding.
He nodded, showing that he meant no harm, and helped Ayana explain things to the warriors. The conversation was careful, measured, and full of unspoken respect. Once the situation was clarified, the warriors left, riding back across the plains. Ayana exhaled slowly, tension leaving her shoulders for the first time in hours. Inspiration. John watched her carefully, admiring her courage and wisdom. She had handled the encounter with a grace he had not expected, showing strength without aggression, intelligence without arrogance. The afternoon passed with a quiet but persistent sense of awareness. John and Ayana returned to the tasks of the ranch, tending to animals and equipment, but both were alert, listening for any sign of trouble. There was a new depth to their understanding of each other now. Ayana's calm bravery and quick thinking had proven her reliability, while John's steady guidance and care had shown her that he could be trusted. By late afternoon, they had finished the essential work and sat together on a small rise overlooking the plains. The sky was filled with heavy clouds, shadows moving across the land in patterns that seemed almost alive. John looked at Ayana and said quietly,
You've done more than I expected.
"Inspiration."
You've shown real skill today, and not just with your hands.
Ayana smiled faintly, a hint of pride in her expression. "I've survived before," she said. "But this is different. Inspiration. I am learning, and I want to be part of it, not just watch." Her words carried more than meaning. They carried a promise of trust and cooperation. Inspiration.
John nodded. We'll need that trust, he said.
Out here, life doesn't give second chances. Danger is always nearby, and sometimes it comes when you least expect it. Inspiration. As the wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of rain, Ayana and John began to plan for the possibility of future threats. They discussed how to protect the ranch, how to watch for signs of trouble, and how to rely on each other in emergencies. Breath. The discussion was practical, yet it deepened their bond. Each conversation, each shared decision, reinforced the connection that had begun in the small moments of the past days. The sun dipped lower, and the first drops of rain began to fall. John moved quickly to secure the animals and the fire, while Ayana helped without hesitation. Together, they worked efficiently, communicating without words when necessary. Their actions were a dance of coordination, a testament to the trust and understanding that had grown between them. As the storm intensified, they took shelter under the small overhang near the ranch house. The rain hammered against the roof, wind whipping through the plains with a fierce energy. They sat close together, sharing warmth and quiet conversation. John spoke of the ranch, its history, and the lessons he had learned from a lifetime of living on the land.
Ayana shared fragments of her own life, careful not to reveal everything, but enough to show her resilience and strength.
The storm passed, leaving the plains wet and shining under the dim light of the setting sun. A rainbow arched across the sky, a brief reminder of peace and beauty after tension and danger. John and Ayana walked among the animals, ensuring that everything was safe and unharmed. Their movements were calm and confident, showing the skills and knowledge they had gained through cooperation and trust. As night fell, the plains grew quiet once more. John built a fire, and they sat together, sharing a simple meal. There was a sense of completion in the day's work, a satisfaction that came from having faced challenges together and emerged stronger. They spoke in low voices about what had happened, reflecting on their experiences and the lessons they had learned.
Ayana looked at John thoughtfully. I didn't expect to find this here, she said.
A place where trust and respect matter, where strength is not just in fighting, but in understanding.
John nodded. You've learned quickly, he replied.
And you've shown that strength comes in many forms. Courage, intelligence, patience. These are as important as skill with hands or weapons. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the distant sounds of the plains at night. The world beyond the ranch was vast and unpredictable, full of challenges they could not yet foresee. But for now, they had found safety in a fragile harmony. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and potential conflict, and they had done so together. Before resting, John prepared the fire to last through the night, ensuring warmth and light. Narration. Ayanna watched him, noticing the care and precision in every action. "You think of everything," she said quietly. John smiled faintly.
"It's necessary," he replied.
Narration. And sometimes it's the small things that make the biggest difference. That night, under the quiet watch of the stars, both John and Ayanna reflected on the day's events. Narration. They had survived danger, faced the unknown, and strengthened the bond between them. Trust had been tested, courage demonstrated, and respect earned. Though the plains would continue to hold challenges, they knew they were no longer facing them alone. Tomorrow would bring new obstacles, new decisions, and perhaps new dangers. But for now, they rested, strengthened by each other's presence, by the skills they had shared, and by the understanding that survival was as much about trust and cooperation as it was about strength and courage. The morning light stretched across the plains in soft golden beams, illuminating John's ranch with a gentle warmth. The air was calm, carrying the fresh scent of rain from the storm the night before. Everything seemed peaceful, yet both John and Ayanna knew that this peace was fragile. The events of the past days had tested their courage, skill, and trust, and they had emerged stronger, but the world beyond the ranch remained unpredictable. Ayanna moved quietly near the fire, her dark eyes reflecting thoughtfulness and resolve. She had spent days learning, observing, and proving herself, and now she faced a new reality. The Apache warriors would not forget her absence, and she knew she could not stay with John forever. Yet a bond had formed between them, forged through shared danger, cooperation, and respect.
It was a bond that neither could easily ignore. John approached her, holding a small basket of food.
He spoke gently, aware of the unspoken thoughts between them. "Morning," he said.
"Eat before the day gets too warm. There's work to do, even if it's small today." Ayanna accepted the food but paused, looking at him with a mixture of gratitude and sadness.
"John, I cannot stay here," she said softly. "I belong with my people. They will come for me, and I must go with them. But I will never forget what you have done." John nodded slowly, understanding the truth in her words. He had always known that this day might come, though he had hoped it would not.
"I know,"
he said quietly. "And I would never ask you to stay if it isn't right. You've earned your freedom, and that is more important than anything else." Both of them had learned from each other. Ayanna had shown courage, intelligence, and skill beyond what John had initially imagined. He had seen her adapt to life on the ranch, face danger calmly, and make decisions that kept them both safe. In turn, he had offered her safety, guidance, and respect, showing her that trust and compassion could exist even in unexpected places. After breakfast, they spent the morning preparing. John helped Ayanna gather what she would need for the journey back to her people, ensuring she had food, water, and a few useful tools. They worked together efficiently, each movement marked by the familiarity that had developed over the past days. There was no awkwardness, only a quiet understanding and shared purpose. Once everything was ready, they walked to the edge of the ranch where the plains stretched endlessly before them. Ayanna mounted her horse, looking back at John with a mixture of respect, gratitude, and unspoken emotion.
"Thank you, John," she said, "for everything."
For trusting me, for helping me, and for showing me that people can care for each other even across worlds. John's voice was steady but soft. "You've shown me just as much, Ayanna." Courage, intelligence, and resilience. Things I've admired every moment you've been here. You'll always have my respect, bird. For a long moment they stood in silence, the wind moving through the tall grass, carrying the sound of distant birds and the faint rustle of the plains. The connection between them was palpable, a bond formed not through words alone but through actions, choices, and shared experiences. Inspiration. Finally, Ayana spurred her horse gently and began to ride toward the horizon, her figure strong and confident against the vast landscape. John watched her go, feeling a mixture of pride and melancholy. Inspiration. She was leaving, but she was leaving stronger, wiser, and alive, exactly as she should be. The journey back to her tribe was not easy.
Ayana moved carefully through the plains, using the skills she had honed over her life and the lessons she had learned from John. She observed the land, the wind, and the sky, aware that danger could appear at any moment.
Grasp. Yet, she also carried a sense of calm and confidence that had been nurtured during her time at the ranch. She was no longer just surviving. She was thriving. For when she arrived at the edge of her tribe's territory, she was met with cautious eyes and sharp questions. The warriors had heard of her absence and had come to ensure her safety.
Ayana explained clearly and calmly, her words measured and confident. The warriors listened carefully, noting the strength and composure in her voice.
They nodded in understanding, realizing that she had returned not only safe but stronger and wiser. Back at the ranch, John continued his work, his mind occasionally drifting to Ayana. Though she was no longer physically present, her presence lingered in his thoughts and in the rhythms of the ranch. He reflected on the past days, the fear, the tension, the challenges, and the moments of quiet understanding. He realized that the experience had changed him as well. He had learned that trust could be earned quickly, that courage was not always loud or violent, and that compassion could bridge worlds that seemed far apart. Berets turned into weeks, and life on the ranch returned to its usual rhythm. Yet John never forgot the young woman who had entered his life so unexpectedly. He often found himself looking toward the horizon, remembering her strength, her intelligence, and the bond they had formed. Occasionally, he would receive word from the tribe that she was safe and well, and each message brought a quiet sense of relief and satisfaction. Whereas Ayana, too, carried the memory of the ranch and of John. Her life with her people resumed, but she was different now, stronger, wiser, and with a deeper understanding of the world beyond her immediate surroundings. She had seen another way of life, one marked by patience, trust, and cooperation, and she carried those lessons with her. The connection she had formed with John remained, a quiet but enduring reminder of what could happen when courage met compassion. First time, their story became known quietly among both the ranchers and the tribe, a tale of respect, trust, and the unexpected bonds that could form between two people from different worlds. It was not a story of drama or conflict, but one of humanity, showing that even in a harsh and unpredictable world, understanding and courage could prevail. Though they never met again in person, the lessons they had shared endured. John continued to tend his ranch, stronger in spirit and more aware of the fragile beauty of trust and respect. Ayana continued her life among her people, carrying with her the knowledge that courage, intelligence, and compassion could overcome fear and misunderstanding. Their story was a quiet testament to the power of cooperation, empathy, and the strength that could emerge when people truly saw each other. And as the sun set over the plains each evening, casting long shadows and bathing the land in golden light, both John and Ayana knew that their lives had been forever changed. Not by violence, not by power, but by courage, trust, and the simple enduring act of seeing one another as human beings worthy of respect. The bond they had formed, though separated by distance, remained unbroken in memory and spirit. Each had faced challenges and danger, and each had learned the value of cooperation and understanding. They had grown stronger through shared experiences, and their story became a quiet, lasting example of how humanity could thrive even in the harshest of landscapes. In the end, it was not just a story of survival. It was a story of respect, courage, and the enduring power of trust between two people who had met under extraordinary circumstances and had come to understand the value of each other.